The chilling events I'm about to recount began in the quaint, seemingly idyllic town of Cedar Hollow. Nestled at the edge of a dense, ancient forest, it was a place where the pace of life moved slowly, where everyone knew each other's names, and where nothing much ever seemed to happen. That was until that fateful autumn. My name is Daniel, and I had lived in Cedar Hollow for as long as I could remember. I had grown up exploring the woods, knowing every twist and turn of the meandering trails. It was a place of comfort and familiarity, or at least it used to be. It all started on a cool, crisp evening when I decided to take a leisurely hike through the forest. The sun was setting, casting long, eerie shadows among the trees. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and the woods seemed to come alive with a symphony of whispered secrets. As I ventured deeper into the forest, I couldn't help but notice a strange stillness in the air. The usual sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves were conspicuously absent. An unsettling feeling settled over me, but I chalked it up to the approaching darkness and my overactive imagination. I continued along the trail, the only source of light being my trusty flashlight. The path was familiar, and I had navigated it countless times before. But that evening, it felt different, as though the trees themselves were watching, waiting. As I walked, I couldn't help but think about the local legends and stories that had been passed down through generations. Tales of strange happenings in these very woods, of eerie figures glimpsed between the trees, and of lost souls who had ventured too far. Shaking off the unease, I pressed on, determined to reach the clearing at the heart of the forest. It was a place I often visited, a serene spot where I could sit and watch the stars emerge, their distant light piercing the canopy above. But when I finally arrived at the clearing, the tranquility I had expected was nowhere to be found. Instead, a feeling of dread washed over me like a wave. The clearing was bathed in an otherworldly, ethereal glow, casting strange and unsettling shadows. Illuminated by this eerie light, I saw them figures standing at the edge of the clearing. They were tall and slender, their forms obscured by long flowing robes that seemed to shimmer in the strange glow. My heart pounded as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The figures were completely motionless, their heads bowed as if in prayer or reverence. But what sent shivers down my spine were their faces, or rather, the lack thereof. Where their features should have been, there were only smooth, featureless masks, devoid of eyes, noses, or mouths. Fear welled up inside me, and I took a step back, my flashlight trembling in my grip. I had never seen anything like this, and every instinct told me to flee. But something held me in place, a morbid curiosity that compelled me to keep watching. As I stood there, paralyzed by fear, the figures began to move. They glided across the clearing with an unnatural fluid grace, their robes billowing as if carried by an invisible wind. It was a macabre dance, a ritual I could not comprehend. In the center of the clearing, they formed a circle, their masked faces turned inward. And then, in unison, they began to chant, their voices low and haunting, like a dirge from the depths of the forest. The words were incomprehensible, a guttural language that sent chills down my spine. I wanted to run, to escape this nightmarish scene, but my limbs refused to obey. It was as though I were trapped in a waking nightmare, unable to look away from the unfolding horror. As the chanting continued, the ground beneath me began to tremble. I stumbled, nearly losing my footing, as the very earth seemed to rebel against the presence of these mysterious figures. It was as though the forest itself was protesting their presence, as though it recognized them as intruders in this sacred place. And then, in an instant, it was over. The figures fell silent, their ritual complete. They turned as one and began to glide back into the depths of the forest, disappearing among the trees. The strange, ethereal glow that had bathed the clearing faded, returning the night to darkness. I watched them go, my heart pounding in my chest, until they were nothing more than distant, vanishing specks in the night. Only then did I find the strength to move, to turn and flee from that cursed place. I ran through the forest, my footsteps echoing through the stillness of the night. Branches scratched at my skin, and thorns tore at my clothes, but I didn't care. I needed to get as far away from that clearing as possible, away from those masked figures and their unholy ritual. The tree line and into the open, gasping for breath. The familiar sights and sounds of the town greeted me, the comforting glow of streetlights, the distant hum of traffic, and the reassuring presence of civilization. I stumbled back to my home, my mind reeling from the horrors I had witnessed. I locked every door and window, my hands shaking as I did so. I tried to make sense of what I had seen, to find a rational explanation, but there was none. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of that night haunted my every waking moment. I couldn't escape the feeling that I had stumbled upon something ancient and malevolent, something that should never have been witnessed by mortal eyes. I confided in a few close friends, but they dismissed my story as a product of an overactive imagination or a vivid dream. They assured me that there was nothing to fear, that the forest was as it had always been. But I knew the truth. I had seen something that defied explanation, something that lurked in the shadows of the forest, waiting for another unwitting soul to stumble upon its malevolent secrets. As the years passed, I became consumed by an obsession. I began researching the history of Cedar Hollow, delving into ancient texts and local legends. I discovered tales of a forgotten cult, one that had worshipped dark and eldritch forces in the heart of the forest. I couldn't help but wonder if the figures I had seen were somehow connected to this long-lost cult, if their ritual had been an attempt to summon something beyond human comprehension. My quest for answers led me back to the forest, back to the clearing where I had witnessed the unspeakable. I ventured deeper than I ever had before, my determination overriding my fear. And then, in the heart of the forest, I found it a hidden chamber, concealed beneath layers of earth and foliage. It was a place of darkness and decay, a place where the very air seemed to pulse with malevolence. Within that chamber, I found ancient tomes and forbidden artifacts, relics of the cult that had once called this place home. As I studied the texts, I felt a growing sense of dread, for they spoke of a being of unimaginable power and malevolence. It was a creature that had been sealed away in the depths of the forest, bound by incantations and rituals that had long since been forgotten. But now, it seemed that the cult's machinations had been set in motion once more, that the being they had worshipped was stirring from its slumber. I knew then that I had to stop it, that I had to prevent whatever dark forces the cult had unleashed from wreaking havoc upon the world. But the task was daunting, and I felt a crushing weight of responsibility. Armed with the knowledge I had uncovered, I sought out others who might help me, who might believe in the horrors that lurked in the forest's depths. Together, we formed a small group dedicated to uncovering the truth and preventing the cult's dark plans from coming to fruition. As we delved deeper into the forest, we encountered strange occurrences, unearthly sounds in the night, eerie lights that danced among the trees, and the overwhelming feeling that we were never truly alone. But we pressed on, driven by a sense of duty and a desire to protect our town and the world beyond. Our journey took us to the clearing, the very place where I had first witnessed the masked figures and their unholy ritual. It was there that we made a chilling discovery, a hidden entrance to a subterranean chamber, one that had remained concealed for centuries. With trepidation, we descended into the chamber, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. What we found there defied all reason and sanity. The walls of the chamber were adorned with grotesque symbols and sigils, and in the center of the room, a grotesque idol stood, a monstrous effigy of the being the cult had worshipped. As we approached the idol, a voice echoed in our minds, a voice that spoke of ancient hatred and unfathomable power. It was the voice of the being itself, and it filled us with a sense of dread and despair. But we were determined not to let it escape. We recited the incantations we had uncovered, performing rituals to reseal the chamber and bind the being once more. It fought us every step of the way, unleashing its dark power in a desperate bid for freedom. The chamber trembled, and the very earth seemed to rebel against our efforts. But we stood firm, our determination unwavering. With a final, desperate incantation, we sealed the chamber once more, trapping the being in its eldritch prison. As we emerged from the forest, our hearts heavy with the weight of what we had witnessed, we knew that our town was safe once more. But we also knew that the darkness in the forest would always linger, that the ancient evil we had encountered would never truly be vanquished. Cedar Hollow returned to its quiet, unassuming existence, but we, who had ventured into the depths of the forest, carried with us the knowledge of the horrors that lurked there. We were forever changed by our encounter with the Eldritch, and we knew that we would never truly be free of the shadows that haunted our dreams. And so, the town of Cedar Hollow remained a place of serene beauty, its dark secrets hidden away in the depths of the ancient forest. But for those who had witnessed the unspeakable, it would always be a place of lingering dread, a place where the line between the mundane and the supernatural was forever blurred.